May feel the ogden down the front straight. Rivkin still right behind him, pacing him.
Hey, my name's George, and this is the Northeast Off-Road RC Racer Podcast. I'm here with my boys, Tom Petrella, Vin Manchenda, and my right hand, Toby Hampson. What's up, boys?
How you doing?
Doing great. Excited.
Race week, baby.
Oh, yeah.
Talking to Race Week, we might as well get into it. So, one of our panels.
TQ'd Race Week. He's already there.
Suck it.
Get the coffee ready for tomorrow morning, Toby. That's all I gotta say.
I'll be drinking it with myself.
But getting back to Race Week, Tom Petrella, man, why don't you tell us a little bit about your time at PNB so that everybody else can catch up to what we already know?
Well, I still have the RC hangover from there because they were long days. We had a blast. So I went down with who went with us? It was Butter, Paul Dalton, Schreffler, Mike Green. So we were down there. We met Novoso down there, a few of Novoso's buddies from down south. Some really cool dudes. Track was awesome. I had a blast. You know, I had expectations with in the past. I saw the Joker lanes and the wooden jumps. I would have liked to seen some different stuff there. Would have been kind of cool. But I was happy to not have a leap of faith. I heard last year people were popping ESCs like every 2 or 3 heats. So I'm content to not have to have dealt with that. But layout was freaking awesome. Track was a blast to drive on. It held up amazingly, too. I mean, Vin, 900 and some odd entries that were there? I mean, God, I should look up how many laps were run on that track. But the track held together. Other than a few sections that were chunky at the start of the weekend, stayed chunky. But it never really deteriorated much off of that. But layout was a blast. Long days. But pretty cool to say I did it. Vin, I know the boys did great.
We could always do better. We had some bad luck here and there. But we know a lot for next time. It was our first time going there. We know not to stay up till 4:00 in the morning because that's not the way you want to start your race weekend because it just kind of hangs over into the next day, and you never really get caught up until the end. So, learned a lot, and our setup was off. We had a couple technical issues, but overall, the boys had a good time. Bree and I had a great time. It was cool to pit with everyone. We were over there in the JC tent with AE, the whole team. It was epic. It was a lot of fun hanging out with Richard Saxton and Spencer Rifkin, Lee Setzer, and Javon was there, and I could just name off more and more. So it was really cool. We had a great time. Definitely going back next year.
Awesome.
But Petrella, let's hear some info. You're a racer, you do well, you've been doing great. I know you qualified well. Tell us a little bit about the track, like the environment, what it was like. I heard you mention, I guess in the beginning, guys were blowing up Speedo, so over gearing issues.
Well, no, that was last year's layout. If you remember last year's layout, they had that big leap of faith, which was a huge jump.
I remember that.
This year was pretty much, I mean, I could still close my eyes and drive around the track and tell you how everything was. But, I mean, there was a few big jumps. I mean, thankfully, I'm an old guy. I can't smell a thing. I can't hear anything anymore, but my eyes still work, thank God. So I could see the backside of the track. There was one section was in the back at one point. Vin, you probably remember that step up before you turned right to come back towards you. Mm-hmm. They actually took that one. There was a harder section of the track they ended up taking out after practice. But we got there early. I think practice opened up. I think it's 6 a.m. Vin, was it? Yeah, it was 6 a.m. On Friday. We got there early. I had 3 or 4 rounds of practice in by 7:30, 3 or 4 5-minute sessions on the track. So I was stoked about that. I took your advice on my e-buggy. I swapped my diffs around. I put so now they're the same direction as my nitro car. Put a shorty battery pack in there, and the e-buggy was awesome. I qualified third, I 6th in one round and 3rd in the other round. Ended up being 5th overall and 40 plus. So
That's
that was awesome. I probably overachieved on that, and then but the did great there. The layout again was a blast. Just going back to the layout, there was a section they had where you drop down onto concrete
Patio,
so like,
right? They
you
call
had
it
to
the
make a trip
patio.
left. I'm sorry. Is
They called it the patio.
that what they called it? The patio?
Yeah, you're right on the concrete. It was
Yeah.
loose.
So that was kind of cool. We had a 4-wheel drift coming on. There was a little tricky coming out, and where I was standing on the stand, I was staying all the way to the left. I just never seemed to get to the right side where you could see the car a little better. So coming out of there as the week went on, it got a little more like a steeper bump to come out of that section. So you had to be a little bit cautious. But layout was a blast. Racing was fun. Nitro, I kind of had a few hiccups here and there, and unfortunately, I made it myself for this one because we got to the track probably around 8 a.m. I don't think my first race was until about 8 or 9 o'clock at night on Sunday. I didn't check my motor bolts to see if my motor bolts were tight. I hit a bump one time, cased it. My motor slid off the gear, and I was dead in the water. After finally calming down, I was starting to find my groove and probably had a chance to move up a good bit more. I had a mechanical failure, which was totally on my own and disappointing for myself that I had 12 hours staring at my car, couldn't go on the track, and I didn't check the motor bolts. So, but I hate to make mistakes, but when I do make a mistake, I try to never make it twice. So if you guys come by and see me at LCRC this weekend, I'll have all my wrenches out, turning everything, making sure everything's tight. Vin gave me some advice on some setup changes. I made some setup changes for the mains, which actually really helped the car to kind of settle it down. I knew the grip was coming up. And I was worried about some of the bumps catching my car. So Vin gave me some ideas about lowering my links and doing some other things, which really helped and felt good.
Do you change your springs at all, Tom, since you went to the shorty pack?
No, right now I feel like the setup between the nitro car and the electric car are almost the same. I did switch pistons there. I went and tried the VRP 20-hole pistons, which felt really good. Did they feel $80 better? Probably not, but I bought them and I said, damn it, I'm using these things now. I have them. They're staying in my shocks forever. But
what were you running before?
I was running the VRP 1314 6-hole.
Okay.
Yeah, I keep a set of VRP with the 6-hole VRPs. I usually keep a set of the stock 515, 516 set of shocks. I keep 2 sets built. I have so many extra parts for this HP car now that I was able to, I could switch back and forth. But a lot of guys even were talking about the 20 holes at Fall Brawl. So I wanted to give them a shot, and I bought them. And the car felt good. It did feel planted. I don't know if I could say it felt a ton better, but it's also tough on a track like that because I put them on, and they're probably going to get back on the track for, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. So it's hard to say how much of a difference it made, but the car felt in the track rather than on. But George, to answer your question, I didn't change springs. I've been pretty consistent with yellow fronts, blue rears on the HP cars. I don't switch them up too much. I mean, I've gone the golds in the front, but I think the new car, you almost need a little bit softer spring. It doesn't have as much steering as the old 819 does initially, so the softer spring seems to help. And I like a soft rear end in regards. I want the car to be planted. I don't want to do anything crazy I don't expect. Did tweak some sway bars around and 4-round with sway bars and stuff, but ultimately I think I landed in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, it shows. Did great.
That's good. I was wondering, with the battery change, it's definitely some grams different. So yellow instead of the
I used
gold.
to run heavier oil and everything when I had the old setup, but now that I actually scaled the cars, and granted that the corner weights aren't identical, the overall weight is about the same with the nitro and the electric now.
What oils you running?
With the 20 holes, I'm running. I got to go back and look at my sheet, but I'm pretty sure I think I'm 500 in the front, 450 in the rear. CST.
Gotcha. In the 40s, right? That's what that works out to.
Yeah, I think that works out to being. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have another thing on my phone because I still like the old AE weight setup, but I always find myself now. I've been using the Ultimate oils, which I like, and I'm constantly going back to. I keep it in my phone. I can't really see it, but it's my chart comparing all the different oils, so I know which one's which.
It's a good idea. So, Toby, I want to say thank you, number one, for being on mute while you were eating all those chips.
Pro tip.
So, tell us a little bit about what ended up happening for IBC. For those people who don't even know what it stands for, what the trip you were going for, and what eventually ended up happening.
Well, I want to echo Tom's point that I love a soft rear end. Anyway, yeah,
Here,
I was
Vince,
supposed to.
you want to vote on that?
Who's staying in the camper with you tonight?
Yeah, so my son got sick the week before, actually. Was it the week before? The week before, and he was in hospital for 3 days. So I was just like, I don't feel. This was the week preceding that week, and I was like, I don't feel comfortable going. And then as it turns out, kind of that week, 10 days prior, I looked at the weather forecast, and it was like, weekend before it was like 70s, 80s, and sunny, and then it just progressively like dived down in the 50s and like predicted rain for like 5 days. And sure enough, there was rain for 5 days, and I already bailed before then anyway, just because of my son. Luckily, I had refundable tickets, so it didn't cost me a penny other than the entry fee. So and then the race got rained out on Saturday morning. So I guess it worked out well. Feel bad for the guys, but what are you gonna do? That's racing outdoors, right?
That is.
I haven't touched an RC car since Fall Brawl, which was just first weekend of December. Of course, leaving it. What's that? 5 months. I was hurrying this week to put them all back together again after having all that time, and I'm like, let me just fire up my car. This was literally yesterday morning. I turned on the car, brand new servos, turn it back on. One of the servos is totally fucked. So Protec sending me a new servo, but it's not a great way to start. I didn't even get the engine started. I was like, screw this. So I got to change that out tomorrow morning. But I'm sure it'll get better. I'm excited to be back out playing toy cars. So.
Just bring it over to Kevin Winter's booth.
Huh. Yeah, I got 2 engines I got a couple of new engines, one just to play around with, and I got a new 83, which I'm going to try and get running. It's broken in already, so.
Who makes that?
It's OS. It's one of Adam Drake's brand. You wouldn't know.
Excuse me.
You don't connect it. It doesn't connect to a battery, so you wouldn't know much about it.
Absolutely not. But you see, I always ask the question just so I can
Yeah,
stay up.
Just
George,
if you're interested, okay?
George is running my nitro. You're gonna run my nitro car this weekend. We're gonna at least during practice let you do a few laps with it. Fish
Not a
on.
problem. I'll be more than happy, Tom. It's been
There
a
you
while
go.
since I ran
Get
some
hooked.
wrappers.
Nice move, Tom. I like it.
Although this weekend I did some fuel. I took a road trip down to a little bit past Delaware, and I met up with some boat guys in this boat club down called in the Delmarva Peninsula. Pretty good group of guys. They had this huge, wide open pond, fresh water, and most of the guys were senior than myself, so it was good to meet some really like dedicated hobbyists. Learned a lot about motors, motor setting, carb settings, how to set the radio up after I did that. Really good time. And then, of course, did some really fun boating stuff, getting some of my equipment out. But just really great. Then, of course, Lefty saw some of it. He mentioned it to me or messaged me. I sent him some other pictures, so it was pretty funny.
Yeah, he likes his boats.
Most definitely. Yeah. Boats are something really cool. Cars are awesome, man. But one looks like the other. Each one of the boats is like, it's got its own different lines. So anyway, on to remote control. So wanted to say, which I missed saying in the front, but that's why I have these good notes here. I want to say thank you to Ed Bridges, our guest from episode 15. Thank you, Ed, for coming on the podcast, giving everybody some awesome motor tips and skills. I learned a lot for sure. And Ed's a guy that you can send your motors to. He had dropped some names during the podcast of people that he either had motors he was working on or people that had stuff to him. So as you can see, if you want to go fast and especially do well and you're running nitro, Ed's the man you want to send your motors to. So Vin, thanks a lot for bringing him on. That was really cool.
Yeah, my pleasure. He does a great job with all our stuff, man. I wouldn't trust anyone else.
Agreed. He was through you. He was hitting me up on the back channel, so we may see him again shortly in another format or another, which would be cool. In the meantime, we have episode 16 coming up, which is today, and our special guest is going to be Thomas Kaufman. For those of you who don't know, he was a race director at LCRC, and he's also a great racer. We're going to bring him on in a few minutes. Toby, you have it. I highly doubt, but figured I might ask, do you have any stats from the barn or anything like that from opening day?
No.
Okay. So we'll just it'll be a verbal. So barn, right, had their opening day last weekend. It's a pretty good turnout from what I know. Rohan was pretty happy for opening day with the number of guys that showed out. Track conditions were good. Steve Plakis was, of course, running prep crew outside, taking care of things. And it was a really good race event. Things were hot. We had some really good racing going on. Buddy Allen was throwing it down. He was doing really good as well as a couple other guys. So it was pretty competitive. And I know that Nitro races were pretty good as well. Good turnout. So that's really awesome. And they had a new race director out there. I think some guy that, forget his name specifically, but you could see it on one of the Facebook posts. Did anybody see him or see his name? Know where he was from?
I think Roe is from New York. I'm not sure where exactly in New York he is, but he does a lot of 10 scale stuff. He's been directing for a while. I think even Traction Action, TNT, a couple spots, and he does a great job. He's a good guy.
Well, he definitely did.
You're having a great idea. You should let that light on.
So I had sent some messaging privately to Corey Williams, who's basically, I think, helping Rohan run things over at the barn. And the new race director was great. We always want to see somebody that, wants to donate some time to help out the cause. But one thing's for sure, right? Barn has got the cancer of the Marshall Blues, right? Nobody gives a fuck. So
Always has.
always has. So so we're there, and basically I'm up on the driver's stand, and Alan was up with me there one time, and basically guys weren't listening, so we were politely trying to say to Roe, and it was good that he was receptive of some of our suggestions, but it was like, all right, if guys aren't going to come out, you got to penalize them. The reason I bring this up is because during my one race, right, he's calling for guys. It was a nitro race before. Now we're running the electric main. I think it was 40 plus A or whatever it was. And, we're missing two marshals. So I lean over to Roe and I'm like, the two guys that you're calling, were they in the race before? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, so why are you calling for volunteer marshals now? I'm like, those guys hadn't shown up. It was like a few minutes had gone by and Roe's calling for volunteers. So I lean over to him. I'm like, why are you calling for volunteers? Those guys just raced. I was like, bro, listen to me. I was like, say on the microphone that if those guys don't show up to Marshall and they end up showing in their next race, that they're not going to be allowed to race their next race because they didn't show up to Marshall. Dude, he broadcasted it. Next thing you know, all you heard was shit coming out of the pits. What the fuck? Who the fuck? No, right? So the guys start coming out of the pits, and now I'm like aggravated because we've already been up there waiting. The whole program's waiting for these guys. And basically, ultimately, they were just, I'll use a politically correct term. They were not upstanding gentlemen in the race community. And hence they didn't come out and do their, obligatory role, which is come out and marshal. So the minute they got potentially penalized, they started coming out. And then basically I just said to the guy, outright, we don't stand for this kind of shit at the barn. We're not looking for that kind of participation. And if you can't just come out and marshal your race, respectively, then don't fucking show up and race at the barn at all. So, it was kind of good. Somebody had to set that tone. And the race director wasn't. And whoever is RDing, if the place doesn't already have the respect, like LCRC, right? Nobody even thinks about doing that there. Then you have to set the tone as if it's a new format. A new situation, new ground rules, whatever it might be, and then be strict about them. Otherwise, show gets out of control. So, other than that, it was a good time. But those were the comments, and I talked to Corey about that stuff. He felt pretty positive about trying to make a change, a little bit more positive than Toby looks right now.
I mean, it's
but
been
How'd you do, George? How'd the race go? The track looked good. How'd you race?
I did pretty good, Tom. I'm still not happy with the S Works where I want to be. I know the car's got a lot of potential based on a lot of good turnouts that have been happening with the car this season for people well above my skill level, but I imagine that filters down to the average guy if you can try to keep it in control. Good. Ophir handed it to me. I wasn't too happy about that, but he's definitely been racing off road more than I have. But it was a good battle last year going back and forth with him. It was pretty funny. Roe actually asked on the driver's stand who was faster than who, just coincidentally, as the two of us are standing there. So Ophir turns and looks at me and kind of smiles, right? So I said, for the 10-year average, I've been racing Ophir. He's handed it to me more times than I have to him. I said, last year, though, I've been kicking your ass. I said, so I changed cars now, so now we'll see what happens. But anyway, he won, and we had a couple other good finishes. Car was all right. Still trying to work on it, Tom. Made some setup changes. Found where some weaknesses are in the car that I wasn't too happy about that I really hadn't heard about. Like, I guess there's some front steering post issues in the car. So if you take a front end too hard, they're known to snap. So I ended up getting like the front aluminum brace. I ordered 3 sets of steering posts, just obviously in case that happens again.
You'll never break another one now. Now you bought 3 sets, you'll never break another one.
Exactly. Pete Margle, I got a set for you. So the funny thing was, I think that happened with Jack Mulligan when we were going down the straight and we were kind of doing a drag race, and then we ended up clipping tires and doing a 360 or some other jump. But I ended up finishing the main with a broken post, which happened to be the post which is right on the steering arm. So all the steering must have just been wacky as shit. So didn't help things, but nonetheless, we'll see what happens at LCRC this weekend. With that being said,
on a quick steering thing,
go.
I was racing at my track one day. The spring inside my radio broke, so it wouldn't find center for steering. Try running on a carpet track. It's about an 8-second lap time. When it doesn't come back to center, you're trying to find center. I look like a squirrel on the track.
I can only imagine.
Like that.
Were the 12 scale laps similar, Toby? Like 8 seconds, 10 seconds or less?
But they're just be impossible to drive without, I've done that too, Tom. Broken a spring. I was back in Out Spectrum days. They were pretty easy they would just break. Actually, they'd break in the throttle, which was even more concerning. Anyway, let's get moving with Tom's.
Speaking of Spectrum, when I used one back in the day, I felt the trigger was like way too soft compared to whatever I had a Futaba, I think, before that. So I ended up taking another one apart that had broken. I doubled up the springs, and only at that point did it feel similar. Futaba's got a lot, I think, more resistance on their standard springs. Stupid radio info. All right. Anybody else have anything to add before we bring in our guest?
Nope.
All right.
May 4th.
May 4th? Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
Open it up. May 4th. Got the pipe.
Well, you want to explain what that is to people who might know? I know what you're talking about.
We'll do it at the end.
Like Star Wars Day, no?
It is. May the 4th be with you. It's also when Rhythm Outdoors is going to open up for the first time.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Well, we won't wait any longer.
You can come dressed as a stormtrooper if you want.
I'll do it.
Well, you'll have your arm like this if you're halfway there.
Yeah. That crippled stormtrooper. Great.
That costume won't stay white long. But that would be funny as shit if your arm was cranked up like that. All right, we're going to bring our guest in. Welcome, Thomas Kaufman.
Hey, fellas, how's it going?
Hey.
How you doing,
Got
Thomas?
good audio and everything?
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Fun to be here.
Cool, man. Well, I was real happy to reach out to you. I think Tom Petrella was one of the first guys who had mentioned your name. So I want to give Tommy some of the prelim credit of mentioning you. I know the other guys know you a lot better than I do. I've seen you at LCRC a couple times, said hello, stuff like that. But pleasure to meet you formally here.
I dive bombed you in E-Truck once. I think we met there.
I'm retired. Those are old memories.
It's a regress memory. It was so bad he's forgotten about it.
Exactly. Tom's got a vast history. For those of you who don't know, Tom is a experienced race director for LCRC and possibly other tracks. We'll ask him about that in a minute. Other than that, Tom's I think dabbled in two-wheel drive buggy from some of the research that I've seen, 10 scale, probably other formats of those cars within 10 scale, and last but not least, I think A scale racing. Is that correct?
Yeah, yep. Big two-wheel buggy guy. A lot of two-wheel and four-wheel buggy, e-buggy, nitro buggy, e-truck, and a couple winners of touring car, but those are long gone.
Nice. I like the touring car background too. So when I reached out to you, part of the reason why I wanted to bring you on the show was we were talking about trying to bring, diverse people to have conversations for the race community. And one of that I kept hammering was, we really need to bring on a race director so we could really get the perspective out to the general racer, which is kind of picks up on something that I said a few minutes ago before you came in, but I know you were listening, which was like a marshaling scenario, right? Mm-hmm. So I want people to basically learn what it's like to be a race director, what it's like to handle the headaches, handle the great moments, what it's like to set up a big event, what it's like to, run into scenarios at the track during a race event that, are huge issues to an individual racer, but might be a few clicks on the mouse to you in order to make the correction or adjust the stats. So if you don't mind, I know you're a racer as well, and we'll definitely talk about your racing a little bit farther down the line, but I wanted to talk about some of the RD stuff that you could bring to the table for us.
Well, sure. Okay. So for the race directing thing, Pit Stop Hobbies, when Joey Kiley bought that in 2016, 17, that's when I started race directing. Joey and we pitted together at bumps and jumps and stuff. And so when he was thinking about buying it, I said, well, I'll do it. So that was my entry point. And then I did Richfield for a couple of winners, which is how Kevin got to know me and how I ended up at LCRC. So that's kind of my race directing background. That and Highlands of Donegal, which is a turf track and then an on-road track. And I did Duffy's Dog Days of Summer traveling series for officially a year, and then another year when he hired someone else and that person never showed up. So it ended up being me anyway. But no, for that, how you deal with the marshaling and the little issues. I teach high school, and it's really the same thing between managing a classroom and managing a race, in that you're going to reap what you sow culture-wise. So if you set standards from the start and you adhere to them, then you're going to have marshals, you're going to have better driving standards, people are going to be prompt and on time. But if you are kind of overly friendly, which we definitely know those guys who they want to be nice, especially when it's that customer dynamic. It's like your racers are paying to be there, so you don't want to be mean to them, but you still have to be stern with them so that those rules are enforced. Because if they're not, that's when you have certain people not marshaling, not showing up to race on time, and all that.
That's definitely part of it. What is it like to so you get the phone call, right? You're going to RD the Mugen Challenge as an example, mm-hmm. or any other large regular. It's not a Halloween race, right? It's Cancer Race Big, or it's Mugen Challenge, or mm-hmm. whatever it might be at LCRC. So when you were first, set up with something like, do you handle that atypically to a normal race day? Certain other standards that you do? Or you more excited, more nervous about setting it up? How does it differ from a standard race day?
The setup's all about the same. You just kind of, I guess, maintain a higher level of intensity through the day because you feel more of a time crunch. Because if it's a Halloween race with 180 entries, we can take our time. If somebody breaks an A-arm on the warm-up lap and they've got the part right there, maybe we can wait for them. But at things like the Cancer Race, the Mugen Challenge, it's hammered down. So you have to be more willing to, I don't want to say ruin days, but you have to be more willing to move on if somebody's having an issue. It's really, just different in your attitude and how you enforce the switch over between races and how strictly you enforce marshaling and that kind of stuff. But otherwise, it's largely the same. For something that you know a lot of pros are coming to, I like to do a little research, make sure like during the main, if I'm going to reference an event that they won the previous year, that I kind of have that right, that kind of stuff. But it's largely the same whether it's 200 or 500 entries.
You talked a little bit about the culture, right? Setting the tone, like the classroom. It's a funny analogy, right? Because, you know, you're dealing with kids in the classroom. I don't know if you're teaching grammar school or high school. Did you specify before?
Oh, I teach high school, like engineering and woodworking and things like that.
Gotcha. All right. I still think that's even different, right? Because I remember being a kid in high school and I went to metal shop or wood shop, and those were classes I wanted to go to, right? So I had different respect for the teacher in those classes than, let's say, the, you know, biology teacher as an example class I couldn't stand going to. But you're dealing with a bunch of racers, right? That are, you know, ultimately babies. They're not even guys that are excited to go to your class. So how do you think you set the tone different, or why do you think? I've asked this question a lot, and I think a lot of racers already know this, right? LCRC's got this different tolerance. It's got this, you know, different aura around it when it comes to marshals and marshaling. Why do you think it is that way and other tracks aren't that way, or that they suffer from some type of marshaling cancer?
Well, you've got you have the race director, and then you also have the owner, and they're separate people. If you are the all-in-one, you are the track marshal, you are the race director, you are everything. A lot more things slip through the cracks. A lot more people might get away with not showing up, because if you're managing everything, you're going to miss things. But at LCRC, you know, Kevin's on top of things, and I know that if I were to hit that radio button and say, "Hey, Kevin, I'm having a problem with this person," it'll be dealt with. It's already done. I can go back to my job, focus on calling the race, and I know that it will be handled. A track that I worked at for a long time, I tried to maintain good standards, but it was a situation where I docked somebody a lap for not showing up to marshal, or yelling at marshals or similar things. And if they'd go down to the hobby shop and complain to the owner about losing their lap, I'd get the radio call to give them their lap back. And so then it gets hard to maintain that culture. So it's really, it's kind of about who you have behind you.
True. It's true, right? You can't be undermined. I see that in just general work conditions. You know, if you're a manager, you make a call, can't have the boss undermine you. Then your troops don't have any respect for you moving forward. Whether or not the call is good or bad, you know, you still got to make the call. It's life. What would you say is probably the most important thing for RDing for you? What aspect of the job?
The most important thing is that balance between running a tight ship and people still having fun, because they are still customers, they are still paying to be there. It is their time off, it's their weekend, it's their getaway. But whether they know it or not, they're going to have a better time and more fun if there's some rules imposed on them, which I think it goes back to the teaching thing again. But it's lessons learned from starting off RDing club races. Like, I didn't start doing 200, 400, 500 entry races at LCRC. It started with 50 entries every Friday night at pit stop, and just like kind of cutting your teeth, figuring out who you are and how you're going to run it.
Makes sense. I got a bunch of other questions.
Everybody's scheme. That's pretty impressive.
That takes time, but that's because if you're doing the dog day series, you're doing pit stop, you're doing LCRC, and it's all the same people, you get to it's the same people every weekend. But when people change colors, man, I'm not going to know them for a year.
That was how long that was actually one of my like small buried questions. How long does it take you? Let's say a new guy shows up at the track, right? You haven't seen his colors before.
Mm-hmm.
Does it click does it click with you pretty quickly? Meaning, for some reason you see you have to call him out, or he ends up, you know, getting into a crash. You notice the colors, and then is it kind of locked in there, or do you have to? Does it take a while to pick up a new driver to the track, a new body scheme?
I'll pick up the body really fast, but it'll be a while until I put a face to it. Like, I'll know that Jim is the orange and white one, but it might be 3 months until I actually have an interaction with him and go, oh, that's who Jim is.
Right.
The body is the easy part. It's the faces that take a while.
It's funny, right? When you look at RC racing, most guys know the bodies or the colors even before they know the guy's name or any interaction in between. It's funny. I got more questions, but I got 3 other panelists here. You guys have any questions for Tom?
Well, George, we kind of missed one early on, which you always ask. And I don't want to cut you off. I mean, want to stay on the race directing side, but Thomas, just kind of give us some background. How'd you get in RC originally?
2008. We were looking for some gun shop here in Lancaster, and my dad's a guy who has the big fold out map. He's big on that, and we were trying to find this place, so we pulled into a random parking lot in Mount Joy to look at the map, and that happened to be Pit Stop Hobbies, and some guy was driving his Flash on the track and let me take it for a lap, and that was kind of it. I just saved up for a PlayStation and I bought a Flash instead.
Wow, talk about destiny.
Yeah.
That's awesome, actually. I mean, most kids at that age most definitely would have been like, maybe later, but huge paradigm shift, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm from a racing family. Like my dad ran sports cars when I was growing up. I have an uncle who raced SCCA as well, and now my dad runs USAC sprint cars currently. So it's a whole family thing. My brothers and I all autocrossed and shared cars, so it runs pretty deep.
I would imagine so, with all that stuff hanging on the wall behind you.
Yeah,
Speaking of that,
stuff.
you're gonna have how long before my little buddy starts running RC?
Well, he likes turning the wheels and stuff, but he's not looking at where the car's going yet. But we'll get there. He can't quite hold the radio on his own yet, but I've seen kids as young as 4 racing in Sportsman, so I think it'll kind of be up to him. It's when he starts bugging me that he wants to do it, then he'll start doing it.
We got to find that picture queued up of him he had the baby on his chest. He had the remote in front of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't strap him on anymore. He's got enough reach now to actually mess with the wheel.
Those Mini Z controllers are really small and they're easy. Like I found that to be probably the best deal. And you can set up a little track. Like we set up a little track in the basement, and like before they went to bed, man, we would just run them, chase the cars, and then when they can control it, then it's a whole different thing. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Enjoy. That's awesome. You're going to bring him to the track this year?
I'm sure he'll make some appearances. Yeah. But for mostly for the LCRC weekends, my parents hang on to him.
Yeah. Cool.
Grandparents never say no. That's for sure.
Nope.
They're like, great, I'm going racing.
Mm-hmm.
What you got any great stories from Ording? I mean, race directing is more complicated, and at the end of the day, yes, it's easily run on a computer, right? But I think that your description of it really quick, and I think at the end of the day, it's more right. You're like a timekeeper. You're a psychologist or therapist to some degree, right? Guys coming up, freaking out, their transponders not counting, they missed a lap, they're late to the race, they missed the race, they didn't realize their heat was up, right? And they're trying to get back in and reshuffled. What are some of those experiences like?
Yeah, I've seen those mini meltdowns from the local EOCO to world champions, like getting up in my grill about something. It's like, hey man, it's all right. If you just pretty much no matter who it is, you just look them in the eye and like, hey, it's gonna be all right. Okay, yeah, we went to 4-minute sessions. It's okay. Like it's funny stories though. I don't know. I tend to flush most of that stuff out because it helps me like people if I forget about their meltdowns. I don't know if I have any funny ones queued up.
All right, we'll get back to that.
Yeah.
So, with all the races that you've RD'd, as an example, what's some of your most memorable races? Is it one where you can challenge? Ryan Mayfield's there. He's fighting for Testman for the last couple of laps in one of the mains, or is it, something where Schreffler's, laying it down with one of the Manchenda boys? What's some of the more memorable races that you've had in the past that you really stand out?
2021 Fuel Nats. That was the bucket list one. I wanted to call a national title. So that was the big one. That was like after that one, I kind of had this sense of, okay, I've done what I wanted to do. And that's when I started kind of dropping off how many tracks I was working at and how many events I was doing. That was definitely the peak for me. But there's been a lot of like just random 4-car B mains that end up just being 3 lead changes a lap and things like that. I think outside of Fuel Nats, my favorite thing was just calling Friday nights at pit stop or at Richfield. It's just a bunch of guys having a good time, running into each other in the B main. Everybody's laughing and yelling at each other, and like it's way more fun when you know all the people in the race and you can pick on them, and that's the fun stuff.
Do you pick on people sometimes when you're announcing? I've never noticed that.
I would never, but 40 Plus has a brand new set of sponsors this year.
Hey Toby, question. The
Right.
intro that you have for the podcast, where there was a clip from LCRC, is that Tom calling the race?
Yep.
Sweet, dude. I didn't even know that. You're in our intro.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm not sure when that was. Maybe Mugen Challenge in like 21, 20 or something. I don't know. But a lot of big names there. I don't think.
2020 Mugen was huge because everybody had already booked a trip to LCRC for Nats.
It was like nationals, right? It was everyone was there. So that could have been when Rifkin and Mayfield were there and all the other guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was wondering because that's a really cool part of the intro that Toby put together. And then as you were talking, I was like, oh, maybe that's Tom's voice calling it out in that section. So it's cool. That's when Rifkin kind of crashed in that section. Not that I was watching it, just remember seeing it over and over again.
So I just dreamed up some questions for you, Thomas, whilst I'm sitting here with my notepad. So, I've always respected you as a race announcer. Probably one of my favorite race announcers in the Northeast. Actually, there aren't really many, but anyway, how do you make let's say it's like first race of the day, like race 1 or something. It's, really quite boring. How do you make it interesting for both, people watching and the racers themselves? You know what I mean?
Right. So oftentimes that race 1 at 6 a.m. is a novice race. So you just kind of talk about random stuff. Sometimes you coach them a little bit and you say, hey, green car, if you, stay between the pipes, it'll go a little better for you here. Just some gentle suggestions. Just, this is something that Ezra and I worked on a lot, bouncing stuff off of each other, just how to fill dead space.
Right.
That's kind of that's the thing you try to avoid the most, is just these long silences. So just talking about random stuff, talking about RC stuff, talking about the food trucks that are going to show up later, just all the other things.
Some banter.
Yeah.
I think another thing that's important for a race announcer is to somehow have eyes in the back of your head, right? To try and watch. I see some. I guess you see it on a lot of different events, right? Some the announcer or we're watching something going over here and something really significant's happened over there. It's got to be kind of challenging to have those eyes on the back of your head to be able to see everything that's going on, right? I mean,
yeah. Sometimes you'll hear, like, if it's an A main or something, you'll hear an ooh or an ah from whoever's standing in that corner, and then you can kind of look over quick. But oftentimes you don't notice anything until they cross the screen and you see 2 names flip. Or you see a name start dropping down and you start looking around the track like, oh, he's flamed out. He's over here. Like, it's just until it happens on the screen, it's pretty easy to miss it. At LCRC, you've got a pretty good window there. But like at pit stop, I'm in a shed at ground level. So if something happens in the front right corner, they know that I don't know.
Yeah.
And you end up saying a lot of, all right, guys, I didn't see it. You've got to sort it out between yourselves because I don't know who did it.
Well, let's say, you're new to being a race announcer.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say be like, let's just say top 5, I don't know. What's important for success? You know what I mean?
I watched a lot of Scotty when I like first knew that I was going to be running the program at Pit Stop in whatever year that was. I just found some events that Scotty Ernst had called. It's like, all right, how do I find the balance between entertainment and information?
Right.
Because as a track announcer, you do have to let guys know their gaps when people are closing. I know that one of my weaknesses to the end was calling lap traffic.
Right.
So you work on all those things. As much as you might hate the sound of your own voice, which I think most people do, you got to watch your own races back. You got to listen to your own thing. And you see in the video there's a crash and that you didn't ever know about it. So you got to make those mental notes and study yourself, kind of watching your own game film in a way.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah, my son is just trying to get his career going, and he does. He's a cameraman for amateur wrestling. So he's on his feet, moving around the stage, doing live camera for all these sweaty, hairy, freaking amateur racers. But one thing he does every weekend is he sits down and he watches. He rewatches what he did and the angles that he got with the camera, and it tries to best himself for the next time around. So I guess that's what you're same kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I teach digital photography, and that's something I try to stress to those students a lot is you take the pictures, you turn in the assignment, but let's go back and look at them. Like what could we have done better, different? It's just that self-reflection component.
Yep. So a couple other things, and then we were just talking about this before we got you on here. How do you solve the problem? And it's probably pretty obvious, but maybe some other people are listening. How do you solve the problem of marshals not turning up? Or
something that I learned from my eldest brother, who's also a teacher, is he has the phrase, you shoot the first one. The first one that steps out of line or does it wrong, you got to make an example out of them.
Yeah.
I can think of an example. I was doing some of the trains indoor stuff last winter or 2 winters ago, and there was a group of dudes who I didn't know them at all, and they were just running mini B, and they just didn't come back out to marshal at all. And
right.
So I'm not much of a yeller in the classroom or anything, so I let peer pressure kind of do things for me sometimes. So I said something on the microphone like, all right, guys, well, I guess we'll take a short break until heat 15 feels like coming back out to marshal, and then just sat back in my chair and let everybody else yell at them.
Hey, gets it done. Another question for you. What's important for a racer, actually, when you're calling the race? I've been frustrated recently. I've been raced for a while, but during a race, I've been frustrated about the information that I'm getting. From the race announcer, like I'm very rarely ever at the front of a race, but I want to know where I am. You know what I mean? In the order, so that I know where I'm working for. So how do you talk to that?
It is important to call the battle for 7th as well as calling the battle for first. Like when it comes down to the last 30 seconds, the battle for first is what's important. But
right.
In the middle of the heat, in the middle of the race, let the guy in 7th know that he's closing in on 6th. Like Toby might want to know that he's actually catching Tom now.
Right.
So you just gotta be mindful that the guys in 8th paid the same amount to be there as the guys in 1st. So
exactly.
Make sure they know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, calling lap traffic, which is something that not a lot of people do.
Mm-hmm.
But
those Tessmans complain about me.
especially in qualifying. Well, he's quit, so you're okay.
That's true.
And I guess that's it for my cars. Just talk about your history in terms of chassis you ran. I think when I met you, you may have been running Techno. No, before Techno. What did you run before Techno?
Techno was my first 8-scale sponsorship. I was running the Mugen stuff before, just because I only tried 8-scale because I was working at LCRC. It's like, all right, if I'm going to be here once a month, I might as well get an e-buggy and join in. So I got a Mugen because it was LCRC. So it's just, Kevin has a bin of every part they've ever made.
Yeah,
it was just the logical choice. Then I went to Techno because I liked McGuigan, and then I found out he was leaving. I was like, well, I like Bill Borden anyway, so let's go try Techno, try a C-Hub car. And then I was there for a year, and I liked it there. But then I had a chance to be a manager with WRC, so I went there for a year. Lutz left like 2 days after I signed up or something. Like, come on, that was half the reason to come here. But that was a good experience doing the manager thing for a little bit and learning another car. But I had to, when I went working full time at LCRC, I had to start transitioning back to Mugen because it's going to be part of my job. Hey, there's the WRC on the screen. And then I went to Kyosho because out of all the cars I've driven, I really like the C-Hub stuff the most. And I like my 8-scales to feel a lot like my 10-scale buggies do, because I race 10-scale year-round, indoor and outdoor. So that's kind of where my focus was for most of my 15 years, something like that. So yeah, I like the Kyosho stuff a lot. Lutz actually stayed when I switched over this time, so that was cool. And then Ezra followed, and at LCRC, I pit with Pierce, and Tom will get one soon, I'm sure. You know, it won't be long. We have a whole group chat about convincing Tom to come to Kyosho.
He's the holdout. Just
but
someone's got to buy parts. I mean,
Pierce sent me a care package. He sent me a Kyosho hat and a Kyosho shirt.
He sent us the tracking info for that so that we'd know when you got it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but having Pierce at LCRC for parts, having the cruises at Trains for parts, it seemed like a switch that would be simple, because if I broke something I didn't have, I knew it was still going to be there.
Yeah. I know Kevin's now stuck in parts as well. And you've been, I guess, long time AKA guy?
Yep, AKA is the only tire sponsor I've had. I think this is my 4th or 5th year. And then for 10 scale, Schumacher was my first ever sponsor in 2018. I was technically off of Schumacher when I ran for Techno because they had a 4-wheel, but they, still supported me with the 2-wheel drive and the touring car. And then as soon as I left Techno, I went back to Schumacher. So I've been there forever.
Yep. Yeah. All right.
So, Vinny, I got a couple other things to talk to Tom about, but you have any questions for Tom about RDing or any of the other various topics?
Yeah, I wanted to know about the products that he sells. Like, I know there's some titanium stuff in there. What you got, man?
Well, behind me there's 81, I think 81 different sizes of titanium screws in that organizer there. I think there's about 3,000 screws there, but have a bunch of screw kits on the website. I'm pretty proud of my inventory system because they're all organized by size. But if you buy a kit for a RC8 B4.1, it pulls the correct number out of each individual inventory. So that was my stay-at-home dad project when I was home with the kid. I built that.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's
different
fun.
colors too.
Yeah,
wow.
Those bins and trays and stuff behind me there, that's where the electroplating happens. So titanium you can't anodize because it's not porous at all. So you have to electroplate it, which is you create a controlled layer of rust, and the voltage of DC you put through them is what determines the color. So like left to right on the screen there, the bronze is the lowest voltage, and then green's the hardest color to make there at about 95 volts or somewhere around there.
So you're doing these each, so if I order a set of blue screws, you only have raw screws, and you're actually gonna electroplate them before you send them to me?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Which is
awesome.
The other Kyosho guys were having issues with those big steering knuckle screws falling out, and I never had one fall out. It's like, oh wait, because I have to ultrasonic clean them to electroplate them. That's why mine never fell out.
Note to Paul Dalton if he ever listens to this. He's got a problem with his.
And I've got some other stuff. I have the wheel nuts, some 10, 12, and 14 gauge wire, and then I got a quote on some arm inserts, and I didn't like my quote, so I bought a CNC, and that's in the garage. So I'm pretty close to arm inserts and stuff. So this is for the rear of the Kyosho truck. Been running that since the week before Motorama, and then my newest thing is just acrylic solid links to replace the shocks, because somebody was telling me about how to perfectly balance the Kyosho e-buggy, and they were scaling it with the shocks on, which just drove me absolutely nuts. So I made these solid links so we could scale it properly.
Very
I think
cool.
Butter had to drop some of those off to Ryan Lutz wanted a set.
Yes, he was the one who drove me nuts with scaling it with the shocks on.
So you selling full screw kits or only specific screws based on number?
They're full kits, as in it's exactly what the manual prescribes. So like that's how I put them together. Is I just go through a car's manual and just tally everything up. And if there's going to be a screw that's not included, that'll be noted in the description. Like I think it's HB has these M3.5 screws that go the whole way through the diff. That's such an obscure size that's one that I won't have, but because I have minimum order quantities when it comes to the raw screws. So if one car uses one of them, I'll probably skip that one. But for the most part, they're complete. A little more complete than the T-Works and Clinic stuff is, which is kind of the goal. Just want to have the best kit.
Sweet.
Awesome. How much is a kit go for? Like for a B4.1, for example?
For a B4.1, so what I've learned is that it varies greatly by kit.
Okay.
The X-ray kits end up being the cheapest because they don't use a lot of M4 hardware and they don't have inserts or anything. So they end up being cheap, and then AE ends up being really expensive because they have all those arm insert screws and the upper arm insert screws. So like a B4 kit is 188 screws, which for grade 5 titanium, that's $280, which is a lot. But with it being grade 5, it should be something that you can put on to multiple cars if you want to. So when you build a fresh car, you should be able to take it out and put it in the new one, which is what a lot of guys used to do with the Lunsford stuff, because it's in that price range, because grade 5 titanium is pretty expensive.
Yeah, it's not cheap. But that's cool.
Yeah, my margins aren't great, but it's fun.
Would you be able to customize it? Let's say I didn't want the arm inserts. I don't run any arm inserts, let's say. Would you be able to customize a set and do it without those? Yeah,
it's definitely possible. Something I've done with a couple different people, like somebody wanted screw kits for their crawler, which I don't have any knowledge of that world. So I just gave them a discount code that would be the equivalent of if they were buying a kit instead of individual screws, because it does end up being cheaper to buy a full kit. So I just gave them that discount code. I said, you know what your crawler needs, just put the correct quantities in there, use this code, and we're good.
Easy for everybody. That's good. Yeah. That's cool.
So are you only doing titanium, or are there different grades for, let's say, cheaper price point if somebody's looking for a screw kit?
Just grade 5 titanium. For the grade 2 stuff, there's Kyosho and then ProTech has all that. I think ProTech's branching into grade 5 as well, so I'm curious to see how those are. I would advise people stay away from the Hyro Sikis. They are weaker than aluminum. So I've had a bunch of the different screws, testing stuff and checking stuff, and the ProTechs are fine. I mean, grade 2 is going to be softer than steel, but for low stress areas, it's fine.
So why don't you explain to people that might not understand the nature of what you're talking about? So why does somebody want a grade 5 titanium screw versus their stock steel screw?
Okay, so grade 2 titanium is pure titanium, which is actually a kind of relatively soft material, but it's not super expensive either. So that's why you'll see a lot of guys use those in low stress areas, kind of the same areas you'd be willing to use aluminum screws in like 10 scale and touring car. Grade 5 is 6% aluminum and 4% vanadium, which through the magic of metallurgy makes it have the same tensile strength as the steel that our screws are made of. So they're as strong as the steel screws, and they're 41% lighter. So on a car that has a lot of M4 hardware, like the Kyosho, I'm saving about 200 grams in screws.
Wow. Pretty substantial. And then
Yeah, really adds
what
up.
about the sockets? Are the sockets more durable? Meaning you made a reference before of reusing screws, right? So is the other
Right.
pitch, they're more expensive and you get a more reuse because they're going to last longer. They won't strip out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in terms of just the strength of the material, it's about the same as the steel, like the good steel screws you get in a kit. But we have the heads broached pretty deep, so it's a pretty deep socket, so they should last pretty well. That did bite us once because the M2 and the M2.5 screws, we had them broached so deep that it made a thin spot, but that's corrected now going forward. But yeah, they're broached pretty deep. I'd say they're as close as you can get to Lunsford quality, but what Lunsford had going is something that nobody else is going to be able to emulate. They had an aerospace business and then made the RC stuff out of their leftovers and their scrap. So they were able to do it in the US. The foundry that Lunsford got their titanium from is maybe 40 minutes from me, and I still couldn't find a way to make it financially feasible to do it all in the US.
Not easy doing stuff in the US, that's for sure. Unless you have another business that you can parlay from it. All right. Well, some of the other things I noticed while doing some research about you, you also have a YouTube channel, right? Where you offer setup advice or other RC related information. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so
Sorry,
the
Facebook page. I'm sorry.
oh yeah,
YouTube.
the YouTube, I just have a couple of videos about converting the Schumacher two wheel from a carpet setup to a dirt setup, because that's definitely an area that the brand's lacking in terms of dirt setups. It's gotten a little better now, having Cav and Champlin on the team for a couple of years, but for a while there, I felt like I was the only guy in the U.S. running it on clay. So I just wanted to put videos out about, hey, here's the parts we change, here's the settings we change, here's a good starting point. And then I've used the YouTube to live stream at events that I've had as well. But yeah, the Facebook page, I made that originally for the purpose of not bombarding my non-RC friends with race reports, because my teacher friends and my former professors and all that, they don't care. They don't need to know. So it started out for that, and then the business followed after. So I try to do a mix of propping up the products a little, doing some setup stuff, because I think that that's part of my duty as a sponsored guy to make sure that the information is available, and then put my race reports up as well.
Sweet. So you definitely have to hang out and watch Vinny's setup section at the end of this podcast, and then you can chime in and agree, disagree, or throw him a high five.
I've definitely looked at those Manchanda cars a little cockeyed before.
Maybe you can give me some advice then.
No, the thing is, you guys have weird setup stuff, but you're beating me, so I don't know what to make of that.
Looks like you need to get back and do some testing, bud.
Yeah. I'm glad that G's is kind of getting back in full swing, because that's a lot easier to do now.
That's awesome. It's good to see G doing well.
Yeah, Ezra and I went down on Saturday, and it took some peat moss to get it there and some wood chips, but we got a groove going. It was pretty fun.
Nice. That's awesome. How many entries did you guys have out there?
On Saturday, we ended up just calling it a practice day, because it took us till noon to get the track runnable.
Gotcha.
Sunday I didn't go back down, but I think he had 50 something. So
Cool.
maybe. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we got to get over there soon for sure. Support my buddy G.
So I found an interesting quote, Tom, in some of the research I had done about you. You says your interests in some website I found this. It says your interests were outside of school, of course, include RC cars, baseball, basketball, and anything that ends with a checkered flag. Do you remember making that quote?
What's that for? Is that like RC tech or something like that?
Could have been. I just thought it was a great little saying that I saw. You know, I try to do my research. Google's obviously my biggest tool, so I try to go through as many links as possible and obviously separate the wheat from the chaff. And there are other people with your same name, right? Maybe you just have two F's or one N.
I was a doctor in the 1800s, and
Yep.
I'm a dentist now.
But basically, I laughed because in the quote you said, basically anything that ends with a checkered flag. So I had to copy and paste that and put it in my notes for tonight. So I obviously found that was true. And if you put that quote, it was probably 10 years ago, maybe. Who knows?
Oh yeah, but it all still stands true. I mean, I've got the NBA play-ins over here on the other monitor. It's everything in that quote still holds. Baseball, basketball, and pretty much anything racing.
Awesome, man. That's funny. I really appreciate you giving us insight on being a race director. If there's anything else that stands out in your mind in terms of a race that you called, right, or something happened between two main guys, I think I was looking at some point for something, maybe more memorable or exciting that might stand out. You're like, oh yeah, well, I remember this race. These two guys, these two pros had, and whatever it might be. But ultimately, I'm a racer who's trying to look at it from one perspective versus you calling thousands of races at this point, and they probably all blend.
Yeah, I have really terrible recollection of what happens in these races. As a race director and as a racer, I can't tell you how many times somebody's come up to say like, sorry for bumping you or whatever. I have no idea what they're talking about. I never even knew I got hit. For whatever reason, it's just, I don't know if I'm just trying to be in the zone when I'm driving and directing or what, but I don't remember almost any of it.
It's amazing, Toby. Right?
It makes me feel better because I'm the same way. I mean, I'll walk off the stand and someone will say that to me. Don't get any ideas, George, either. But typically, I guess it's good to have a short memory sometimes.
Yeah.
I always leave smiling.
It's funny, right? You can start a race, and let's say the beginning of the race gets caught up, or somebody bunches it. There's a pile up, whatever the case might be. You can always remember certain sections, but like a lot of times, you might not remember the specifics of what actually caused the accident. Although you're watching it with your own eyes, right? You're recording it with your brain, but then so many things take place between that and the end of the race, and then you try to go back and be like, all right, did I cause it? Did somebody bump me? What actually happened? And then it's always interesting.
Yeah, and it's something I've heard pros talk a lot about in their post-race interviews, because Scotty will ask him, oh, you got together with this guy on lap 3 and then you put your head down, and they'll talk about, yeah, we don't have time to think about who did what or who caused it. It's like, we're in the middle of a race. We got to get back to it.
Exactly. All right. Well, I don't have any other specific questions. I went through basically your YouTube channel, your Facebook page. I threw up the RC Garage stats. Your stats are quite impressive, to say the least. I don't know if we didn't make any reference or I didn't, read from it, but for any of those people who did read it, it's quite impressive. You're definitely a fast guy in the area, not just a race director. So you have quite a lot of accomplishments in your racing career. So kudos to you, man. Anybody that races with you knows that you're not only a professional racer, but you're also a gentleman in the race scene, and you've race direct as well at a top level and set a standard, right, for other people to follow. So I really appreciate you coming out. If the other guys have any other questions for you, please throw them out there now. Otherwise, if they don't, or after they ask the questions, we're going to jump into Vinny's setup section. Hopefully you're going to hang out with us. We'd love you too. And then you can watch us close out the podcast, because I know we're all heading to LCRC in a couple hours.
Sure. Just want to put out there that anybody watching this who's thinking about race directing, please. There's not a lot of race directors. If you want to be a race director or a teacher, we have shortages of both. So if any of those things sound interesting to you, reach out. Feel free to send me a message on Facebook if you don't even know where to start. Live RC instructional videos are a decade old at this point. So if you need some tips or tricks or help with computer setup, as far as the stuff in Live RC goes, I'm pretty solid with that, and I have most of those guys' phone numbers if I don't have the answer. So if you want to be a race director, please do. We need them.
That's awesome, Thomas. Thank you.
Thomas, I have a question for you, because you're definitely, as George said, one of the fast guys, right? You're always right there. Really enjoy watching you race, because you race clean, but you race hard. But when you think about your program, right? Sometimes we take steps, which are small steps. Sometimes we take steps that are bigger steps that really help us improve. Is there something you can point for me, and maybe for listeners too, is, hey, this is one of the things I kind of picked up and learned, which really gave me was a bigger stepping stone, or a bigger step for me in improvement. Is there anything that comes to mind?
For sure. The biggest improvement I ever made was over the course of a summer, probably 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 8. But I was pretty bad for a long time, and I'm glad those RC garage stats only go back to 2016, because the first few years were just me putting a 6.5 in an RC 10 B4 and breaking stuff every round, running clay tires outside, just not a clue what's going on around me. But definitely the biggest improvement I made was a summer where I got off of work about 2 minutes away from pit stop, and I just went and put a pack through each car every day on my way home. That was the big stepping stone of just practicing multiple times a week, practicing consistently. And that's what I tell anybody who asks how to get better. I say, well, how many days a week do you practice? And they just stare at me blankly, like they only go to 1 or 2 races a month, and they don't know why they're not getting better. It's like, well, you gotta find the time to practice.
Yeah, some guys have backyard tracks. That's why their kids are so fast.
I don't know what
It
you're
helps.
talking about.
or tracks in their neighborhood like Tom.
And I'll tell you what, I have a
I've had a track for 2 years on
backyard,
carpet.
too.
I still suck at it.
Two tracks Tom has.
I've got a back
I have
deck
a
that
carpet
would be
track.
a good driver stand.
What's that, Tom?
I've got a back deck that would be a perfect driver stand. Overlooks my 40 by 80 fenced in backyard. It's all I need is for Katie to say okay, and it'll happen.
Put a double right by the swing set.
Oh yeah. Jump over the fire pit.
Nice.
Vinny, remind him how much maintenance it is.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah.
Yep. I used to be responsible for pit stop being runnable every week, and that was certainly a task.
Oh wow. Yeah. There it is. Outdoor tracks. Not easy, especially after it rains. Rain ruts.
Gosh, yeah.
All that stuff. You got to find dirt somewhere. And
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We did have a guy with a laser come in and give it like a 2% grade one year, and that made our life a lot better. We had a major flood. It rained 13 inches, and the next day we raced.
Come on.
I remember posting directions on how to get into Mount Joy because there's only one road still open.
wow.
That's
yeah.
crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
2%
Well, Joey's an animal too. He can get after that physical labor stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get 10 inches of rain though. It's a game changer.
Yeah, 10 inches of anything, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
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 Impressive.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so cool. I think we're gonna roll into Vinny's segment. Toby's short of questions. I think he's passed out from the ride to LCRC. He's exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
There it
Those
is.
flights are pretty hard.
He had to return that beer he rented.
Oh, good. All right, we're gonna hop into the next segment, and the next segment is going to be our setup segment, brought to you by Vin Manchenda. Take it away, Vin.
All right, episode 16, we're going to talk about wheelbase. All right, and first off, the wheelbase is the distance between the front and rear axles. And you change your wheelbase by moving your lower arms forward and back on the car. There's usually some shims in each car. I know we have shims in the AE car. So a longer wheelbase is going to give us more stability. It's going to be a more stable car. A shorter wheelbase is going to give us more rotation. All right. That shorter wheelbase car is also going to be better on technical tracks. You're going to find it has more weight transfer from front to rear. It's going to have more drive shaft angle. And that's significant because the drive shaft angle actually creates mechanical bind and makes it a much better option for low grip tracks, much like LCRC this weekend. So getting into the front and the rear, a shorter front end is what that's going to do for you. Moving the front arms back is going to make the car turn in sharper. And the reason for that is there's less caster angle. We talked about caster before, but less caster angle is going to be better for more technical tracks. You're going to have a little bit more, forward weight transfer as well. A shorter rear is going to be good on loose tracks. And that's because, as we talked about, the drive shaft angle and the weight transfer is going to give it more of a rearward bias, weight bias. And that's just going to increase overall the rear grip. Now, you want to also make sure that you don't increase the rear grip so much that your front end is getting pushed around, which, that can happen if you're moving everything shorter, the hubs and the arms. You can start pushing the front end around. So you want to make sure to adjust that as needed. And if that's happening, maybe move those hubs back a little bit. Now, getting to a longer wheelbase, we're creating more stability. Okay, there's less weight transfer from, less diving onto the front end, less squatting onto the rear end. It's going to be longer and more stable. It's going to turn in smoother. It's going to be good for your high-speed tracks, your open tracks. It's going to, have a little bit more on-power steering. So let's get into the rear and the front. So along the rear end, when you extend it from the rear, it's going to be better on bumps. And the reason for this is that same thing, that drive shaft angle. When we take away that drive shaft angle, what we're doing is we're kind of loosening up the mechanical bind on the rear end, and it's allowing it to absorb bumps a little bit better. So that, and you're also going to have less weight transfer to the rear now. So that is going to create a more stable rear end, which is also going to give you some more on-power corner exit steering, which can be beneficial once again on those bigger high-speed tracks. A longer front end is going to give you more caster angle. So that's going to make the front end smoother. That really helped. Let's say at PMB, Tom was talking about transferring from the concrete, there was an edge, a lip going to, so not only did we move the arms forward, but we also add a little kick up there, which we've spoken about before as well. So these are some things to help it smooth out those bumps. And it just makes the car a little bit less edgy, especially once again on those high speed tracks. And that pretty much sums up wheelbase. And don't forget to, subscribe, like, and ask questions down below. If you can, leave your comments. Tell me what you want to hear about so we can discuss it in the next podcast. And that pretty much sums it up. Thanks, guys.
Great job, Vin.
Thanks.
Wheelbase is an often overlooked thing, right? Many racers forget about that. You were making some reference in the front, right? So when you were talking about turning in better for the caster angle, you were talking about the front arms, right? Were you talking about like on the AE car, moving the front arms, the top front arms front and back to adjust the caster angle?
Yep. So same thing goes with the bottom. When you're adjusting the bottom, you're also changing that caster angle, but you're also affecting wheelbase. So yeah.
Good to know.
Yep.
Hey, Tom, since you had mentioned before C Hub, right? And
Mhm.
you're running Kyosho now. That's C Hub. So what car did you run that was pillow ball? If you did,
The
sounded like you did.
Mugen 8, the 8R, and the WRC.
All right. So I'm a C Hub guy for 10 years. I just went to a pillow ball car for the first time, driving the S Works platform. What advice could you give me from going from a C Hub for many years to now running a pillow ball car?
Mhm. Um, there's some different setup philosophy, and there's an adjustment in driving style as well. Kind of obviously the pillow balls and the C hubs, they look different. It's a different kind of mechanical setup, but really what makes them feel so different is oh, I need my vocab. It's the offset of the wheels relative to the line of the
Scrub
kingpin
radius.
radius. Yep, thanks, Ben.
You got
Um,
it.
so the pillow balls and the C hub cars kind of have opposite setups. Now I don't know what to tell you for the S Works because they have kind of a C hub rear end with a pillow ball front end. And now I know AE, you guys are with a much more upright kind of kingpin angle with your new pillow ball setup. So I'm starting to get lost in the sauce a little bit. But my experience with pillow ball was you turned the car with the throttle more, and with C hub you turn the car with the steering wheel more.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good
that's
way.
what I'm trying to.
Yeah.
That's what I'm still trying to get used to, Petrella.
Just send it, George. Be all right.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna have to do. Just try to send it, but I'm not. It's like one of these things that's kind of tough, right? I've been driving a C Hub car for a long time and being, cautious and precise around my turns and not over throttling to get the steering. So I almost feel like pillow ball car is almost more suited for somebody who really likes to get on throttle and kind of like hang it out there
Mhm.
versus, kind of point and shoot. So I'm giving it a few months. Right now, it's been a little tough. I can't get into the turns well. I feel like I'm pushing going into the turns, and then
Yep.
when I realize, right, and then when I realize I got to put on throttle, I'm already pushed out too far. Then the car is like whipping around. I'm only like my third race into it. Tomorrow, hopefully, we get some good practice in at LCRC. Made a couple other changes, and I don't know. We'll see. I'm definitely going to come looking for you though. See if you can.
George, if you get frustrated with that setup, I would advise not coming by our pit area at night after a few beers. Do not bring your credit card with you. Don't bring your phone. Someone's going to have you order something.
The great news is, Tom, I know you got so many parts. We can build a car that night for the next day if I'm not happy.
Oh, no, you'll be on a K car before you know it. There's a full court. There's a full court press in that pit area.
There sure is. It's the new techno of 40 plus. It's just the easiest car to get around the track.
That's it. Yeah, well, I'm definitely curious, and I'm definitely going to hit you up for some notes as well as I've been doing that, Vinny, with every time we're out or over at Vinny's house, trying to get some opinions of what's going on. So
Yeah, bring a notebook because if you ask either Ezra or I, we'll start arguing about it and going back and forth.
So do you think more toe is good or bad for a guy that was coming from C Hub?
Front or rear?
Like
Yeah,
rear,
front or rear.
because I figured in the beginning that if I added less rear toe in the back, the car would come around better.
Yep.
And I might make turns tighter. So last time I went from 3L rear toe to 2L rear toe, trying to see if that would help me come around. Some of the team guys felt because I described my driving style as more point and shoot than, carrying a lot of speed through the turns, they felt that more rear toe would be better for me, and then maybe I should look at an optional plate that they were running. So I put that on last time. I wouldn't say that it was bad. I'm not comfortable yet coming through the turns, and I think I still need, just like you said, practice to feel more comfortable in the car. But I don't know. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
You kind of have to drive the pillow bar or the pillow ball proactively. I guess you have to know that you're going to start to get back on the throttle well before the apex. But I'd be curious what Vin says about this, because something I always struggled with, especially LCRC being low bite, trying to get that front end into the corner and initiate steering. And I've seen the Manchandas have pretty stood up front shocks, and I'm wondering, did that come about from trying to get the car into the corner?
So that is going to be more of like a support thing. I don't know if when you stand it up, you can also drop the sway bar and get a similar effect. You know, when you drop the sway bar, then it's like, okay, that was a little too much. And that's when you start standing the front end back up a little bit. And then standing the front end up is also going to support it a little bit more in the bumps and the jumps. You know, so from there, it also has to do with springs. You know, and we've been going softer and softer in springs too. So, but the combination, you know, is you just got to go out there and try it. Now, with this 4.1, let's see what Aiden and Dylan come up with this weekend for their setups. Let's see what the conditions are like, the grip level. You know, I know we're going to have a little moisture, but, you know, I have a feeling it's going to dry out a little bit, and we should probably get a nice little groove going. So let's hoping for the best. But yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Scribbles are ready.
Nice.
All right, awesome. Well, considering we're all going on a big Mecca, I'm going to try to wrap up this podcast a little bit earlier. We've been pulling a bunch of 2-hour podcasts and then a little bit over 2 hour on some of the bigger ones. But it's not the amount of time. It's the quality of the material that we're covering. That's my opinion. And we covered a lot of good material. Tom, you gave us a lot of good insight on what it's like being a top-tier race director. And we got some good insight on your racing career, what kind of styles you'd like to run. And your stats are quite impressive. And I know we're going to see some of that this weekend. And then we covered some of your YouTube channel, Facebook page, and some of your funny quotes from the past. Do you guys have anything else that you want to ask Tom or cover or bring to the surface? Anything I didn't mention or cover or Google for that matter?
There's one thing I wanted to talk about real quick. There's a couple new JC products that are coming out. I know Kevin a lot of times covers new products and stuff like that. I know he's not here tonight, but there's new bullet connectors. There's some new polycarbonate wings. I noticed tonight on the website that dirt bites are finally in stock. So, you know, if you want to give those a try, now's your chance to order them on the website. By the time this airs, it'll probably be out of stock. But, you know, check it out whenever you can. The polycarbonate wings look really promising. The Razor and there's one more. So we have them on order. Next podcast, maybe I'll have a couple and I'll show you guys.
Anybody ever try out that new dirt bike yet? That remote controlled dirt bike, Moto X? I'm not even sure what it's called. The only remote control. The Losi one, yeah. I don't know what the specific model designation it is for, but anybody run one yet?
I have. It's fun. It's different. I mean, it's overpowered. It's got plenty of bite. It steers like a pillow bowl car. It pushes a lot, but it's a different format. It's pretty cool.
I tried one this weekend. My buddy had one. I was floored at the quality of the build, the durability, and yeah, granted it pushes, right? Because it's a motorcycle on dirt, and it definitely doesn't have that, you know, tough steering. But the fun that I had with that thing, you could pull wheelies like that. It was awesome. And then one of the other things I thought was great, you could actually do like a brake slide with it. So I was running in the street at my friend's house. I was whipping down, and all of a sudden, you know, you could lean into your turn and then just slightly hit the brakes, and you'd see that rear wheel lock up, and the bike would go into a slide, and then you could come right off, get back on the throttle, and hit it again. Then it was awesome, dude. It was awesome. I could see literally, you know, getting into like, and that was with the knobby tires. If you got the slicks on it, I'm sure even more fun.
Yeah,
I think
Supermoto.
Yeah, Supermoto, I think, is the way, like, it's got to be an open track with a couple, like, little low jumps, like, really low, high-speed jumps, and I think that's the way to go with that class. I saw it running on a few tracks. It was just horrible. Like, dirt tracks. You can't run on an A-scale track. It was, like, horrible. Do you guys think it was horrible? Did you see it run on an A-scale track?
From the videos I've seen,
backyard 10 scale track.
What's that,
Yeah.
Vin?
I from the videos I've seen, it does look loose, and I think you have the right idea. Supermoto would probably be so much fun, especially after what you're saying about backing it in and getting into the corner like that. Man, you show a couple track guys I used to hang out with one of those, and it's over.
It's over,
But
right?
yeah,
And the other thing I thought was great was basically they take a 5,000, like brick pack, and it goes right under the driver's seat. So basically, they were just hard case packs. You pop it, slide one out, slide one in. They made it real easy. The gyro, when you turn the thing on, it like takes like I guess 30 seconds to spool up, but it literally sounds like a NASA like spaceship about to like get up to ramming speed before you send it. And it was just pretty awesome, man. So for anybody out there who hasn't seen one or want to try one or on the fence, dude, go drop the 650 if you got extra coin and you want to have fun in your backyard or just with a couple buddies and have some fun. You can only see how much fun it could be if you weren't into A-scale racing and buying sets of tires for 30 to 50 bucks a clip. Right, boys? All right.
Speaking of tires, I want to plug, this is the AKA Lux. You're going to see this a lot this year. It's what we ran at Motorama. It's what we ran at G's last week. It's what I ran at Pit Stop 2 weeks ago. It's our new go-to. I know the Adrenaline guys have taken a liking to it as well for their track. But it's kind of a pin bar hybrid, and it's a really tall tread. So it's a good tire for nitro mains because it'll take a long time to wear out. And it can actually deal with some dust even though it's a bar. So it's a tire I think you're gonna see a lot of this year.
cool.
Sweet. Good info. If you have another set, we'll come by and borrow them from you this weekend.
I got one of each compound. You can borrow my clays.
Yeah, sure, of course. With
With
that being said,
rotate.
yeah, exactly. There he is. He's back for the farewell signature.
Oh, he's in the shop now.
Yeah, I'm in the shop.
All right. Well, Toby, now that you're back, we can do a proper sign off. It's been an hour and 21 minutes or 31 minutes. Where we at? 32. I know I got some packing left to do, and I'm sure everybody else does who isn't there already like Toby. I want to say thanks a lot to Tom for coming on the podcast, giving us his background and advice for drivers, whether it's RD or racer. As we say to all the other previous guests, we'd love to have you back sometime in the future. And if it's not for a follow-up for the racer or RD, maybe come in and sit on the panel one night when one of the other guys can't make it.
Yep. Thanks for having me on. It was fun. I like a chance to stand here and pontificate. It's what I do for a living.
Sweet. Well, we appreciate it and the participation. Anybody else have anything else to say before we adjourn?
Good.
See you guys this weekend.
Cool.
RC
Awesome,
Buggy.
man.
Right.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. Episode 16 with Thomas Kaufman. Check it out. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, or share this podcast when it comes out. We'll see you guys for episode 17 and a recap from the LCRC opening day race. Thanks for watching the Northeast RC Racer podcast. We'll check you guys out next time at the track.